This is the Vanguard interview series, and I'm your host, Gavin Miller Broomfield. On the Vanguard YouTube channel, we've been talking to activists, candidates, politicians outside of the political mainstream, fighting to reform our broken, corrupt political system and forge the way forward. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Make sure to subscribe to the channel to keep up with our interviews and content. And today we're welcoming Mia Mason, who's running for the U.S. Congress to represent Maryland's 1st District, challenging incumbent Republican Andrew Harris, representative who has served the district since 2011. How are you doing today, Mia?
I'm doing pretty good. Been running around, went all the way down to Snow Hill, and now I'm back home. So it's been a long journey.
Gotcha. And for viewers who aren't aware or listeners who aren't aware, what parts of Maryland does your district comprise?
Well, it ranges from Carroll County, which is closer to Frederick. More people know where that is, but you go from Taneytown to Elkton, which is the Delaware border, all the way down to Ocean City, to the Virginia border. So we have a massive gerrymandered district, and it's the size of 2 Delawares if you actually want to have a size comparison.
So you're basically running to represent a larger area than the current Democratic nominee represented while he was in the Senate.
Yeah, well, we have 3,000 miles of shoreline, so in a way we have the most. It makes a big difference when we're trying to represent that many people in a large rural area like ours.
Yeah. So it's a more rural area, and you said it's also fairly gerrymandered?
Yes, it is. Another way I like to say it is when we go from the hills to the shores to the ocean, that's our district.
Interesting. And when you're pitching your candidacy, your platform to voters, what kind of reactions do you run into?
Normally it's pretty mixed. I am a very progressive candidate. Most of everybody expects a moderate kind of Republican, but because we're such a polar opposite of Andy Harris, they're like, wow, this is such a blessing. Somebody that will actually give me what I want and represent me.
Absolutely. And how would you describe your political philosophy? I mean, I heard you say progressive, but is there any other way you would sum up your philosophy to voters or to anyone listening?
Sure. So I started out my career as a military veteran. Basically, I always had friends throughout my military career and even had good leaders and bad leaders. But once I came to DC and to Maryland, where I decided to live for the rest of my life, it became more of an advocacy because of what was happening to our country. It was being divided back in 2014 and 15. I saw that and I started taking action on it. I lost my car, I lost my home, lost my health care, I lost a lot of things. But eventually, I got it all back. And then next thing I know, it's going to happen to tens of thousands of people, and it happened via tweet. So we stood up, we went to the Women's March, and we said, hey, look, we need to protect our veterans. We need to protect our women. We need to do a lot more because this is basically a civil rights war. And we have to protect our rights, regardless if it's healthcare, if it's our employment, if it's, trying to find a place to live. It's super important that we protect those rights. And then, after the Women's March in 2018, we saw that ban after ban after ban from 2017 to 2020. We've been fighting these in legal courts. So I took my passion, and instead of doing a business, I decided to be a politician and help the millions who are suffering through a pandemic right now. So, it's just an escalation of, from helping myself to helping others to helping, hundreds of thousands of others.
Absolutely. And I mentioned, or I heard you say that you're a veteran, and I've noticed on your platform. I just want to get your reaction to, not only Donald Trump increasing the Pentagon budget on a yearly basis now, but even Joe Biden now promising to increase that budget. In your opinion, what do you think the right, answer to that is?
Well, I think the right now is that what is not being told to us, what is going on with Russia, what is going on with, China, what is going on with the India border right now, and what's going on in Africa and South America. We have a One Belt, One Road initiative, which basically means all roads lead to China and Moscow, and that's not good for the American outlook. And us as a superpower, we are every bad deal Trump has made has been in favor of those two superpowers. So we have to be able to get the latest sixth generation out there, the latest AIs out there,
Mm.
and make sure that we control the virtual battlefield no matter where we go. These are the things that require money, but not necessarily people. And as us veterans, we're trying to train our new folks how to do the warfare we used to do physically, but in a virtual space. So if you've ever played Call of Duty, that's what we're going to be looking for in the next 30 years.
So you think the budget should be increased to accommodate that kind of training?
It can be. It's all about how it's divided up between the branches and services of what they actually need. We've always used basically fraud, waste, and abuse in reporting it, and then to make sure that these funds were actually used and allocated. So to increase it, it needs to kind of stay where it is, to be honest with you, and then make a proper selection of what type of technology that is needed for our warfighters out there on the ground. This will really help them and understand exactly what's going on, because I've received so much ready for issue use where people just dumped money into the military and it ended up becoming wasted. And we don't need that anymore. We need to be able to have, quality and quantity at the same time so that we can actually swarm into an area, do our mission, and then come back out of it alive. And then make sure that all of our hardware comes with it.
And what's your reaction to the increasing tensions and escalations with countries like Venezuela and Iran, oil-rich nations, which we're increasingly, aggressive with? Do you think that our troops deserve to be sent to countries such as those to fight and die?
Well, they're going in there for one thing, fossil fuels. It was the same reason we went into Iraq. We paid dearly for that. So I kind of disagree with that. That's why we're replacing people with hardware. That's where those military increases are coming from, is we're buying more hardware than we are investing in our people. So we need to create an equilibrium in that so that there's more capable technologies going into the type of warfare that we're encountering these days in the future of electronic warfare.
Gotcha. And I'm not trying to question you too hard on this or anything, but so if you agree that we went to Iraq for oil, then why do you not think we should defund the imperialist military?
Because we still got to protect our country. We have to be able to, have the people like myself and others who are volunteers that want to represent our country, that are proud of our country. Today is a gold star Mother's Day, very much for those who have passed away or given the ultimate sacrifice. We need to understand that they serve their country like anybody else, and they paid with their ultimate life. But now we're trying to change that to where it's technology, to where it's our watches, our phones that are actually doing the warfare, than it is you and I actually in body armor going out there door to door. So that is something that we're trying to see in the future. And, I'm not going to drop anything, but if you think of Chappie, that's a good movie, but, that could be our reality one day.
So you envision RoboCops occupying the streets of Middle Eastern countries and African nations?
Well, it could happen here in America or other countries, but yes, Japan has their huge 25-foot Gundam that's actually functional. So, we could actually see something else.
Interesting. I'm just surprised that you say that so nonchalantly, and you're not more you don't have more of a you're not freaking out about that. Because when I hear that sounds absolutely like the end is here when there's RoboCops on the streets. It's not only domestically is one thing, but I can't help but think that's like Star Wars level, the Empire, when you're looking at the whole world.
Yeah, it kind of gets that way. Even when you go back to the whole Terminator thing and the Judgment Day type stuff, this isn't really going to happen. We have controls and measures in place to actually prevent this, and you don't need a pot smoking Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos to understand that there's a simple way to do this. It's called off.
It's called what?
Yeah, it's called off. Turn it off.
As far as AI and stuff is concerned.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
I wasn't even really talking about the AI taking over. I just meant like
Yeah.
from a taxpayer standpoint, from a corruption standpoint, that sounds like an incredible, massive waste of money and resources when we have people that don't have health care in our country, or people that are, in this pandemic stricken in their and bread lines essentially. Like I just can't grapple with that use of funds when we're experiencing so much human suffering on
And
our
we
own.
have to be able to change that. That's going to be the hardest thing to get pushed through. They just signed a CR to get us through December 11th, and I guarantee you, the Republicans snuck in 35 billion for jets,
Hmm.
a couple million for tanks or something, stuff that's really not needed. That money could have went to our state.
Yeah.
It could have went to other communities. It could have went to SNAP or WIC, and we have to be able to do other programs like, create jobs, create small businesses, and provide legalization for things that, are natural to us, that actually, is an amazing product that anybody can use. And it creates plastic, it creates oil, creates fabric, and I'm talking about legalization of hemp, so that our farmers can grow it, and then the manufacturers will use it, because guess what? It's made in America. They can use that brand and then help everybody else. And of course, just like alcohol, gasoline, or anything else like smoking, we tax it and we create revenue for it. So therefore, we can actually start shrinking that military budget.
Absolutely. I think that's a smart solution. And also, as a veteran, I was wondering if what your opinion on things like legalized cannabis, legalized psilocybin are when it comes to treating things like PTSD. We've seen some, groundbreaking recent research into the field of treating PTSD in particular, but other mental health issues as well with drugs like psilocybin, even MDMA, and of course, cannabis. Do you think there's any, possibility of that being a new frontier of medicine?
Oh, absolutely. Look, if we're doing like Operation Warp Speed, which like the Republicans are railroading the entire FDA in order to press a vaccine, we can take a look at marijuana
Hmm.
and say, hey, look, we've had over 10 years of research on this. It should be legal. It shouldn't be a class one controlled substance.
Yeah.
And for our veterans out there, it is kind of a lifesaver, even for children who have seizures on a daily basis or hourly or minute by minute basis. This this is an opportunity for us in the medical community and for businesses to, seize the day and be a hero. If you can go into CVS and get Sudafed, why can't you get marijuana?
That's a great
You can
question.
go to a dispensary and pay the same price you pay for Sudafed,
Yeah.
but it's a separate business.
Yeah.
So let's make
Regardless of Sudafed, I could walk down the street to CVS and buy enough bottles of vodka to totally, fill up the entire bathtub and submerge myself in alcohol until I'm dead. You know what I'm saying? Like, not to
yeah.
be
Don't forget
hyperbolic, but
yellow. Okay, gotta have
it's
fun
pretty
with it.
crazy. Uh, I saw that you were also in favor of Medicare for all, which is, of course, was a little bit of a controversy in the Democratic primary where candidates were offering their competing visions of, healthcare for America. Why do you think that Medicare for all is the right solution? And what has the response been from voters? Do they agree that a universal healthcare type system is the right way forward?
I think it's about educating them of exactly what we want for Medicare for all. We can say it's this and all of this other stuff, where our opponent says it's socialized medicine. So with this, we need to be able to make sure that it's like a price point per year for the entire family. And it gives us the opportunity to protect all those pre-existing conditions, cover the entire family regardless of their age, and of course, make sure that you get this war on drug prices down, because we're providing nationwide, competition for the drug manufacturers. So this will help, protect those pre-existing conditions that President Trump says that he can just, make an EO and then get rid of the ACA, which, we're trying to build on top of the ACA and, eventually help everyone. Like here on the Eastern Shore, there's only one insurance provider. And we need to be able to change that so that everybody is, covered. Because if they have a job or not, imagine just paying $600 per year for health insurance and not having to worry about having a job or go through some broker to get your health care. I think this will really help everybody out, especially with this pandemic, as they will have a a pre-existing condition, and that could be 1 out of 10 people who have COVID. You
Hmm.
know, that's a couple million people right there, and at least 10 to 20 million people in our entire country who have COVID right now and may not live past the time they're 50 or 100 years old. They're going to be paying more because they ended up with COVID.
Right. Absolutely. I totally agree with that, and I thank you for championing this policy, which is, in my opinion, clearly the correct prescription for our situation. Speaking of prescriptions for our situation, I was wondering what you thought about the Washington's, refusal to get real help into the hands of American people during this pandemic. We've still only seen one serious stimulus check, which many Americans still have never received. What do you think about a response, an adequate sufficient response to this pandemic would look like? And even beyond the pandemic, we're looking at serious economic devastation with permanent job loss, people evictions when the moratorium runs up. In my opinion, it's time for New Deal style reforms to our crumbling system. What kind of prescriptions do you have in mind legislatively? Obviously, you would only be one of many, a huge body of representatives, but what kind of legislation would you be pursuing?
Well, we still have the HEROES Act. It was a fair bill built with bipartisan, and then the Senate came out around with their HEALS Act, and it was solely military based. We could have helped the USPS. We could have helped Maryland, my state, with $10 billion to help everybody have SSLI and WIC and SNAP and everything else to get them through this, and then provide protections for rent, provide protections for mortgages. And now it's just stalled. Nobody wants to come to the table because I guarantee you, this is what's happening because of the, Honorable Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She's passed. They're going to basically say, hey, look, we know the economy's in trouble, the treasury's in trouble, the stock market's starting to go down. We want our Supreme Court pick nominated before election day if you want a stimulus check. And I know that may go to court. I know Trump will take his election to court. But when it comes to November 3rd, whoever wins, I'm hopeful that it's Joe Biden, we can just squash all of this and then push the legislation to get us back on the economy. But because they've used this stall tactic for the last 3 years for any type of bill that's been progressive or central or
Hmm.
bipartisan, our country may fall on Monday, on the 9th of November. And I think it would be a huge disappointment. I am upset by them not trying to work together to help our communities, regardless of their politics. I wanted them to help our country, and they failed. And this is why I'm running, because we have to remove these bad leaders who can't simply work together. And they can blame us, they can blame themselves. It's about working for us, the people that they represent.
Right.
That's who
Uh,
they have to work for.
I agree that the Republicans are mainly to blame here, obviously, with the obstructionism and, putting that military emphasis in that bill. However, I will say that if the House really wanted to make a bold statement, they could pass, a serious bill, something like Medicare for All right now, and then campaign on the fact that the Republicans are holding up people's health care. They're holding up people's health. So I do think that the Democrats, are also being uniquely, intolerably lazy and intolerably, dragging their feet when so many people, like I said, don't have health care, are facing eviction or homelessness or starvation. I do think that both parties have really uniquely failed in this moment. And I was just wondering how you plan on, using your more progressive ideas to hopefully push leadership in the Democratic Party as well to a more progressive place.
Well, I think I'll be doing the same thing that I'm doing like right now with my campaign, calling them, knocking on their door, and telling them what story. If I'm elected, I'll be sharing those same stories on the House floor where people have been stuck with medical bills for months,
Yeah.
lost their car, lost their home, lost their job, are sleeping out on the street or holding a sign just so that they can feed their kids. These are the things that need to get fixed. And, I can't wait till January, to pass this policy. I need to work with the leaders that we got right now and tell them to fix this, because if not, they're going to get replaced, and it's going to be November 3rd. So we have to do everything in our power to call our senators and get this job done. I'm running for Congress. I'm not running for Senate. My senators are good, but for all those other senators, they're in a tough spot right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And is Maryland looking, do you get the sense that, Maryland is going to go for Biden this time? Are you sensing trends in either direction as far as the electorate?
I think I go by the numbers, and we're very positive right now. As long as we stay in touch with our voters, we can actually win this, because the latest poll says that, Joe Biden's winning in Maryland, 24 to 32% increase, which also can reflect to our voter turnout.
Yeah.
I see 84,000 ballots being requested right now, which still provides us a 2-to-1 lead over our opponent. So I'm excited that the people have spoken. They're not losers, they're not suckers. They actually want change, because for the last 10 years, the last 4 years, they've been hurt and they're done. They're ready for change and they want it now.
And has the DCCC been helpful in this race? Do they view it as like a winnable one? Are they investing resources in your race?
We have to tell them the numbers and show them that, we're not a lost cause because our district is gerrymandered. We have to show them, tooth and nail. We're fighting to win this race. And you know what? If it takes a decade, we will get the support we need from the DCCC, the Maryland Party, and from the DNC to help us. I want to see Maryland all blue. I don't want to see just one district red. But eventually, if gerrymandering gets redone, we could end up, having 5 Democrats and 3 Republicans. So this is our last opportunity to make sure that Maryland turns all blue.
Interesting. And you mentioned gerrymandering a few times now. What exactly is your strategy to overcome that? Are you trying to draw on the non-voting population? Are you trying to get the more disaffected Republicans to go over to your side? Like, what exactly has been your strategy to kind of close that gap?
Well, it's definitely been sharing the word. We're doing things like text messaging, phone banking, door knocking. We're doing limited in-person events. We've reached out to those voters who are hurt. And we get them to basically share their stories with their friends. They share their stories on our social media. That provides a lot of organic growth, more than what paid growth can be. So it doesn't matter how much money you can raise during this election. It's about who can get you elected. And that's why we need to be able to get the money out of politics.
Yeah. And I'm usually someone who's pretty critical of both parties, and I still am. But I will say that Trump's rhetoric as of late is very and truly uniquely authoritarian, fascist leaning, especially with his anti-democratic, refusing to accept the results of the upcoming election. So I do agree that increasingly it is time to boot these fools out. And has your opponent Andrew Harris, has he been one of the quote unquote more brave or courageous Republicans? Has he called out the president for his undemocratic notions or comments as of late? Has he called out the fascistic behavior and refusal to respect the will of the voters?
So let me fill you in. He is step in line with them. Okay, we used to have this Russian compound here on the Eastern Shore, and it was dismantled in the last couple 100 days of President Obama. But I have to say, Representative Harris is supported as the 3rd most anti-LGBT person in the entire, Congress. He's part of the Freedom Caucus, and he's, goes overseas to visit Viktor Orban, as also, of course, President Trump. So if you want to see your civil rights and be stripped away, your marriage taken away, Look at Representative Harris. Look at Viktor Orban. Look at what he's done to that entire country. And just think that even Mike Pence is wanting that as well, where they have that authoritarian fascism leadership style that they see everybody as property. We cannot accept that here in America with our democracy. So our vote really has to count, regardless of whoever wants to try to get rid of our ballots. We're going to show up. We're going to vote.
And in the event that Trump was to try to pull like some kind of, refusing to declare or refusing to concede, refusing to respect the will of the votes, do you see, people in Maryland getting upset about that? Do you see people just taking it? I'm kind of, I hope that, there's a huge reaction, a huge revolt against such a unthinkable nightmare. But I also fear, a growing sense of just complacency and people having kind of given up. Obviously, the protest energy gives me hope, but what do you think would happen in that event?
I honestly think that there will be protests. I think that there will be a legislative, push through the judicial courts to be, super fast to get this resolved by January. Because, the House has to be able to certify the election in January. Just like we certified Trump's win in January, we need to make sure that people are on board to support this to contest the election if need be. Or if Trump contests the election, that we suppress his efforts. Like, he's been fighting a legal battle for 4 years just over his tax returns. So we really need to be concerned about what he could do for the next 4 years while still holding office, even though he clearly lost. If Joe Biden loses, I can expect him to say, you got me, better luck next time. But, the American people are still going to speak up against you every day that you're still in office, and you better not even try to go to court for a third term, because he's trying to stack the Supreme Court that way.
Yeah, clearly. And I mean, obviously, I know you're running for Congress, so this might not be something you want to comment on. But in my opinion, it's time for the Democrats to either A, stack, or B, abolish the Supreme Court. I don't think it's a institution with any semblance of democratic value left in it at this point. Regardless of whether or not you agree with that, I think that you're completely correct that Trump is, in fact, stacking the courts in his favor, and to a point where they probably would rule that he could, have a third term if he wanted at the conclusion of his second. So I agree that it's a nightmare situation, and I hope we don't find ourselves in that situation. Mia, thanks so much for joining me on the podcast today. I think you're definitely the right choice for Maryland's first district. And if anyone wants to support you, do you want to let them know the address of your website where they could go to look at your issues and donate?
Yeah, it is miadmason.us. You can also simply Google Mia Mason. I come right up. Or you can do something better. Just give me a phone call, 410-94-MASON. I'm an actual candidate that if you call that number, you know who's answering, Mia Mason. Don't expect staff, expect the candidate.
Well, that's a pretty great illustration right there of, the difference between your candidacy and that of your opponent, and that of honestly most people in Congress, which is, one of the most consistent themes I hear on this show talking to congressional candidates is, my opponent is a non-present congressperson. They're not there in their district. They're not holding town halls. They're not speaking with voters about the issues that actually matter to people. And I think that alone is something that sets you apart. And obviously your bold policy prescriptions. Here's your Facebook page for anyone that wants to check that out.
Yep.
Yeah, so I really appreciate, like I said, championing issues like Medicare for all, the clear, correct stances that should be taken by our elected officials, especially in these increasingly dark times. Thank you so much again for joining me today, Mia. Had a great time chatting with you, and best of luck in the rest of the rest of the campaign.
Thank you so much. Glad to have everybody here listening to us to ramble on, but it's all about making sure that we hear what you have to say now. So it's an opportunity for you to reach out to us. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And if you're watching this video, make sure to like this video, comment, and subscribe. Thanks so much, Mia.
Thank you.